Mantras of our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says the Divine Mother's presence is always there, but if you decide to act on your own idea, your own notion of things, your own will and demand upon things, then it is quite likely that her presence will get veiled. It is not she who withdraws from you. It is not she who withdraws from you, but you draw back from her. With always our love and blessings, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Sri Aurobindo's Savitri, Book 6, The Book of Fate, Canto 2, The Way of Fate and the Problem of Pain, page 449. One yet may come armored, invincible. His will, immobile, meets the mobile hour. The world's blows cannot bend that victor head. Calm and sure are his steps in the growing night. The goal recedes, he hurries not his pace. He turns not to high voices in the night. He asks no aid from the inferior gods. His eyes are fixed on his immutable aim. Man turns aside or chooses easier paths. He keeps to the one high and difficult road that soul can climb to the eternal peaks. The ineffable plains already have felt his tread. He has made heaven and earth his instruments, but the limits fall from him of earth and heaven. Their law he transcends but uses as his means. He has seized life's hands, he has mastered his own heart. The feints of nature mislead not his sight, inflexible his look towards truth's far end. Fate's deaf resistance cannot break his will. In the dreadful passages, the fatal paths, invulnerable his soul, his heart unslain, he lives through the opposition of earth's powers and nature's ambushes and the world's attacks. His spirit's stature, transcending pain and bliss, he fronts evil and good with calm and equal eyes. He too must grapple with the riddling space and plunge into her long obscurity. He has broken into the inconscious depths that veil themselves even from their own regard. He has seen God's slumber shape these magic worlds. He has watched the dumb God fashioning matter's frame, dreaming the dreams of its unknowing sleep, and watched the unconscious force that built the stars. He has learned the inconscient workings and its law, its incoherent thoughts and rigid acts, its hazard ways of impulse and idea, the chaos of its mechanic frequencies, its random calls, its whispers falsely true, misleaders of the hooded listening soul. Words of our Divine Mother and our Lord Sri Aurobindo, taken from the compilations of the works of the Divine Mother and our Lord Aurobindo. Book A Practical Guide to Integral Yoga. Section 1, Aids in Sadhana. Our Lord Aurobindo says, the ascent to the divine life is the human journey, the work of works, the acceptable sacrifice. This alone is man's real business in the world and the justification of his existence, without which he would only be an insect crawling among other ephemeral insects on a speck of surface mud and water which has managed to form itself amid the appalling immensities of the physical universe. Whoever clings to desires and weaknesses of the flesh, the cravings and passions of the vital in its turbulent ignorance, the dictates of his personal mind, unsilenced and unillumined by a greater knowledge, cannot find the true inner law and is heaping obstacles in the way of the divine fulfilment. Whoever is able to detect and renounce those obscuring agencies and to discern and follow the true guide within and without will discover the spiritual law and reach the goal of integral yoga. Our Divine Mother says the divine life and the transformation of the lower human into a higher divine nature must be made the sole aim of all the life. First, the consciousness must be transformed, and then life, then the forms. It is in this order that the new creation will happen. All natures all nature's activity is, in fact, a progressive return towards the supreme reality, which is at once the origin, the goal of the universe, in its totality as well as in its smallest element. We have become concretely what we are essentially. Our Divine Mother says some give their soul to the divine, some their life, some offer their work, some their money. A few consecrate all of themselves, all they have, soul, life, work, wealth. These are the true children of God. Others give nothing. These, whatever their position, their power, riches, are for the divine, valueless ciphers. Lord Aurobindo says, the adverse powers are the forces and beings that are interested in maintaining the falsehood that have created in the world of ignorance and putting them forward as the truth which men must follow. In India, they are termed asuras, rakshasas, pisachas, who are in opposition to the gods, the powers of light. These too are powers, for they too have their cosmic field in which they exercise their function and authority. Some of them were once divine powers who have fallen towards the darkness by revolt against the divine will behind the cosmos. As for the mother and myself, says our Lord Aurobindo, we have had to try all the ways, follow all methods to surmount mountains of difficulties, a far heavier burden to bear than you or anybody else in the ashram or outside, far more difficult conditions, battles to fight, wounds to endure, ways to cleave through impenetrable morass and desert and forest, hostile masses to conquer, a work such as I am certain none else has to do before us. For the leader of the way in a work like ours has not only to bring down to represent and embody the divine, but to represent too the ascending element in humanity, and to bear the burden of humanity to the full and experience, not in a mere play or leela, but in grim earnest, all the obstruction, difficult opposition, baffled, hampered, and only slowly victorious labor which are possible on the path. It is because we have the complete experience that we can show you a straighter and easier road to others, if they will consent to take it. It is because of our experience, won at a tremendous price, that we can urge it upon you and others, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Next subtopic: aim and object of integral yoga. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, the aim of our integral yoga is to open the consciousness to the divine and to find in the inner consciousness and to find in the inner consciousness more and more while acting from it on the external life, to bring the inmost psychic into the front, and by the power of the psychic to purify and change the being so that it may become ready for transformation. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says the object of our yoga is to bring down the supramental consciousness on earth, to fix it here and create a new race with the principle of the supramental consciousness governing the inner and outer individual and collective life. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says this yoga does not mean the rejection of the powers of life, but an inner transformation, a change of the spirit in the life and the use of the powers. These powers are now used in an egoistic spirit for an unending and for undivine ends. They have to be used in a spirit of surrender to the divine and for the purpose of the divine word. The whole principle of this integral yoga is to give oneself entirely to the divine and to the divine alone, and to nobody and nothing else, and to bring into ourselves by the union of the Divine Mother all the transcendent fight, power, widerness, peace, truth, purity, truth consciousness, and ananda of the supramental divine. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, the divine gives itself to those who give themselves without reserve and in all parts of the divine. For them, the calm, the light, the power, the bliss, the freedom, the wideness, the heights of knowledge, the seas of Ananda. Man is shut up at the present in his surface individual consciousness and knows the world only through his outer mind and senses and by interpreting their contacts with the world. But by integral yoga, they can open in him a consciousness which becomes one with that of the world. He becomes directly aware of a universal being, universal state, universal force and power, universal mind, life, matter, and lives in conscious relation with these things. He is then said to have cosmic consciousness. It is the aim of the sadhana that the consciousness should rise out of the body and takes its stations above, spreading in wideness everywhere, not limited to the body. To be a yogi, a sannyasi, a tapasvi is not the object here. The object here is transformation, and the transformation can only be done by a force infinitely greater than your own. It can be done only by being a true child in the hands of the Divine Mother. And Lord Sri Aurobindo says, the object of our integral yoga is to enter into and be possessed by the divine presence and consciousness, to love the divine for the sake of the divine alone, to be tuned into in our nature into the nature of the divine, and in our will and works and life to be the instrument of the divine, The divine alone is our object. Spirit is the crown of universal existence. Matter is its base. Mind is the link between the two. Spirit is that which is eternal. Mind and matter are its workings. Spirit is that which is concealed and has to be revealed. Mind and body are the means by which it seeks to reveal itself. And Lord Sri Aurobindo says the Divine Mother's grace alone has the power to intervene and change the course of universal justice. The great work of the Avatar is to manifest the divine grace upon earth. To be a disciple of the Avatar is to become an instrument of the divine grace. Sri Aurobindo talks about our Divine Mother and says, the one whom we adore as the Mother is a divine conscious force that dominates all existence, one and yet so many sided that to follow her moment is impossible even for the quickest mind and for the freest and most vast intelligence. The Divine Mother is the consciousness and force of the Supreme, and far from above all she creates. But personally, too, the Mother has stooped to descend here into the darkness that she may lead it to the light, into the falsehood and error that she may convert it to the truth, into this death that she may turn it to godlike life, into this world's pain and its obstinate sorrow and suffering, that she may end it in the transforming ecstasy of her sublime Anandam. In her deep and great love for her children, she has consented to put herself the cloak of this obscurity, condescended to bear the attacks and torturing influences of the powers of the darkness and falsehood, and born to pass through the portals of birth, that is, a death, taken upon herself the pangs and sorrows and sufferings of this creation, since it seemed that thus alone could it be lifted to the light and joy and truth and eternal truth. The Divine Mother is the divine consciousness and force of the divine, which is the mother of all things. Prayers and Meditations, May 26, 1914. On the surface is the storm, the sea is in turmoil, waves clash and leap one on another and break with a mighty uproar, but all the time under this water in fury are vast smiling expanses, peaceful and motionless. They look upon the surface agitation as an indispensable act, for matter has to be vigorously churned if it is to become capable of manifesting entirely the divine light. Behind the troubled appearance, behind the struggle and anguish of the conflict, the consciousness remains firm at its post, observing all the moments of the outer being. It intervenes only to rectify direction and position so as not to allow the play to become too dramatic. This intervention is now firm and a little severe, now ironical, a call to order or a mockery, full always of a strong, gentle, peaceful, and smiling benevolence. In the silence I beheld thy infinite and eternal beatitude. Then softly a prayer rises towards thee from what is still in the shadow and the struggle. O sweet Master, O supreme giver of illumination and purity, grant that all substance and ever and every activity may be no more anything other than a constant manifestation of thy divine love and thy sovereign serenity. And in my heart is the song of gladness of thy sublime magnificence.